We are recording and it looks like we're good to go. So,
Okay, very good. It is 5 o'clock. I'll call this meeting of the Campus Reconfiguration Committee to order and ask the clerk to take the roll.
Carol,
Here.
Manny here. Vesper is absent. Kirk,
Here.
Frank, yes, and Williamson. You have four, so just not here.
And are we in compliance with the open meetings law?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the meeting's been properly noticed.
Excellent. Very good. We have a 12-point agenda before us to have a motion to approve. Motion by Caro, second by Manning to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And we also have minutes from our May 21st meeting that have been circulated. Any questions, corrections, updates needed for those minutes? Hearing none, the chair declares those minutes to be approved as presented. Item 6 is public comment. Anyone from the public that wishes to comment to the committee this evening? You're here in person or online? All right, hearing none, we will continue on to our reports, which are item 7, starting with just a campus status update. In broad terms, things haven't changed a whole lot. Josh is here who could give us an update on the status of the bridge project.
Okay. We have run into a slight delay with galleys, so the construction dates are pushed back a little bit, and this stuff happens. Nothing out of the ordinary. They will be coming. End of the week, June 6th, beginning of next week, June 9th, will be grading completion by a subcontractor called McGuire. June 16th, galley will mobilize the site, complete the concrete work, curb, gutter, sidewalk, and south approach concrete pavement. Concrete work should be completed by the end of that week. June 23rd, gassers will be there to do the asphalt paving, and June 24th or later that week, McGuire will return to the site to complete any touch-up grading behind the curb and gutter, and Southpaw will mobilize to the site to complete the landscaping and finish work. And then we're looking at a final walkthrough between June 30th and the week of July 7th.
Excellent, thank you.
Still basically in budget, Scott?
Yes.
Good to know. Right, and other than that the full board approved the MOU with the school district, we haven't seen any status changes really in any of the other buildings on campus. Jumping ahead just a little bit on specialized items, Richland Center High School staff have been in the science building gleefully taking items that they're able to use that they wouldn't otherwise be able to have. So they are most appreciative of the opportunity they've had. They've been there twice and have left with completely full vehicles each time. So they have one little segment of stuff they have set aside yet, but that means both Richland Center and Ithaca have been through it. So now we can talk to other surrounding school districts and see if they would like to come in and see if there are things still there they could use. There are ample test tubes and various devices and things like that still there that other districts may find useful. So, but across the board, the teachers have been just incredibly excited to get their hands on these things. So we're seeing some good come out of it. So, any other things?
I did receive a call from Weston School District with questions about the instruments. So I told them that I would be getting back in touch with them. You know, they are a smaller school district and limited resources. So if that's something we can do to help them, I think that would be wonderful.
I did check back with Jeff Behrens from Richland Center High School, and they were definitely, he went through and had looked at all the instruments for us just to give us a listing of what there was. And Richland Center is definitely interested in some of those. Ithaca, we're not quite so sure about because they don't have a lot of kids involved in the band right now. So whether they have a need or not is still kind of an open discussion, but we talked with all these things about giving our two districts that are completely within the county first shot and then open it up afterwards. So, you know, once Richland Center and Ithaca have anything they want spoken for, then Weston, Riverdale, whoever else can come in and see what they can find useful. Again, there's plenty of those instruments out there too, if they're, and thinking back to Jeff Barron's comments about them, they all need work, but they're usable. So if they're given a good tune-up and lubrication and everything, they would all be perfectly fine for a student to use. So that's good news.
And I'm still communicating with Greg Zimmerman from the foundation on the plotting machine. He has reached out to the school district, and it sounds like the school district wants it. They're just kind of working out those last minute details.
Thank you. And the library has got pretty much everything they wanted out of the library building. They've expressed some interest in some of the landscape rock that's piled up back by the garage. I checked with Randy about that, and he's like, we're not gonna use it, so they're gonna be doing some landscaping projects at the Brewer Library this summer, and it would be very useful to them, so. I told them it's not delivery, but, you know, they can come get some. So. So item B is Venture Architects updates, and I see Corey has joined us online. You're muted, Corey.
He's also trying to figure out screen share.
Yeah. Corey, can you hear us?
Are you able to hear us, Corey? Okay, yeah, we still can't hear you, so. If you need a couple minutes to sort through that, we could jump ahead and talk about our housing summit information under reports and come back to you, okay?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go.
There we go. I'm not sure what was going on there, but for some reason the mute was not turning off.
Okay, we got you now.
Okay. All right. So from our last meeting, kind of went directly to look at some of the downtown site, as well as received the an alternative off-campus site, I'll call it, at the industrial park. So we kind of evaluated that, and I will show those options tonight. Now, if I can get that to work, let's try something. There we go. You can see the screen
Yes.
now?
Yep.
Okay. So if you remember, we kind of looked at the downtown site. Take a look at options for that. I know parking was a question. So these options right now, that looking at that, we're looking at closing one of the streets. If in the blue is the potential future law enforcement center, orange is a justice center, and then if you remember, we had some parking off to the left, and the question is kind of how much parking. Your existing parking lot is up right around 40 stalls. With this option, not increasing it too much, but we have 45 public stalls, and then I'll call it 9 sheriff stalls in this option. I'd like to go through all of the options, and we can kind of go back afterwards and talk about each one.
Okay.
If you don't mind. So this is one option. I have another option looking at this for a law enforcement center, kind of the south side. Again, we could keep that, get a connection. Now remember, we're trying to evaluate master plan for, you got the county, the courtroom is in the existing building. We would need some sort of a connection to get any detainees to court in the time being. So depending upon which department kind of goes first, if the law enforcement center and jail or a justice center, but then we would have justice center located in this area. You could still have the connection to the existing jail, getting them to courts, and then the law enforcement center. So these kind of a dual option. And then again, the parking, this does eliminate and I should say reduce some of the parking in that side. Yeah, I have 41 public parking stalls and then 9 sheriff stalls. So last time, if you recall, one of the questions was what would be a parking structure downtown. So kind of looked at that. I do have a couple options with that. So if we took the existing parking lot, made that a structure, this location would be 42 stalls per floor. Law enforcement center kind of on that, and I'll call it the north side. Attach it to the existing, and then the justice center would go here. That parking structure, 42 stalls per floor. If looking at doubling up on the parking stalls, let's just say there's 2 floors. Our estimator gave me a number approximately $50,000 per stall. So you are looking at over $4 million for a 2-story parking stall, just to keep that in mind as well. And then I have this option as well. Justice Center would go into the parking lot, Law Enforcement Center, kind of that same similar location, and then parking structure on here. So I'd like to go back, and I do want to concentrate on these right now. So again, kind of looking at the options, Law Enforcement Center goes first. You would escort any detainees to court kind of the same way that you do it now. Justice Center could come in at any time, infill it, and then you'd still get a connection from Law Enforcement Center to the Justice Center. And then we could still have a connection to the existing facility for any expansion that way. Any questions on this concept?
Questions? Doesn't seem so, Corey.
Okay. This option, again, I'm trying to be as flexible as possible. Law Enforcement Center, through the existing parking lot. Again, make that connection to the existing courts. And then at later date, you could have the Justice Center, or if the Justice Center goes first, you have the connection to the existing jail, and then Law Enforcement Center afterwards. Any questions on this concept? Okay.
Oh, doesn't look like it.
So this option, again, with the parking structure, again, parking gets expensive when you do a structure, so that's why we try to do surface as much as possible. We're not impeding too much for existing street parking when we're closing the streets. We are doubling up the parking that you would pretty much have in that existing stall parking surface parking lot with that. So that would be an increase. And again, you could do that, the parking structure, the way this is laid out, you could come back at a later date, work with what the parking that you currently have, and then build out the other Law Enforcement Center and the Justice Center, and then come back with the parking structure again at a later date. None of these three are trying to impede on which one goes first. Obviously, with this option, if you did the Justice Center first, we don't have a connection to the existing jail for getting them to courts. So this option kind of implies having the Law Enforcement Center first, Justice Center second. And then moving on to this option with the parking structure in this location, this option does still impede that you can have either one could go first, justice or law enforcement center, because you still have those connections throughout. So this works out quite well. Just to note, obviously, we can landscape, etc., around the area with this street on how that all works out. Those are the options that I'm presenting tonight for the downtown area. I will go to the I'll call it the industrial site. Here's the site that we were given, and there is a little piece just south of Industrial Drive on that property. But I was concentrating on this location. You will see this light green boundary is designated wetlands. So we're trying to stay out of that area. Now, again, this is just master planning for future growth, having in the future have a total government center on this site. So this would include law enforcement center, jail, courts, any county government would all be in this location. As you can see, it does fit pretty well on this site. It does get work. I was kind of concerned first with the wetlands, but I think this is a viable option for the future. Again, as you kind of master plan, you could put potentially the option of putting the jail out there, put the sheriff and the jail out there first. If you're looking at county government and the justice center, this option right now has those being built basically on the second floor above the sheriff's office. So those are things that have to be evaluated. If looking at expanding more horizontally and having county government in the justice center on the first floor, so those could be expanded, I can see how that works out. I think you can get the government center, justice center, again, with the connection from getting detainees to courts in a secure facility in an area so they're not crossing paths with judicial staff or public, especially in juries. It's usually the courts are above it, up the law enforcement center and jail, and so you bring and escort them up kind of vertically in a shaft into court holdings, and then they go into courts that way. Any questions on kind of this option and how this kind of lays out?
So in the end, this is mothballing this site, the current site that we're at now, and this would completely replace everything here?
This would be kind of maybe a master planning for future for everything to be on this site, yes.
Mr. Carroll.
So then what are your assumptions for sizing the different components?
That was our programs. We did a program, we met with all their departments, what those needs were. So we have those square footages, and that's what this is based off of.
Okay.
And then any future demands.
So with this site, I'm assuming, if we go in with Justice Center and Sheriff to start with, there's plenty of parking as it becomes an all-encompassing prospect. Is there concern at all about enough sufficient space for parking? And then if we have that big a parking lot where runoff and stuff might go?
Well, obviously the runoff would start going towards that wetlands area that's in the light green. So we do have enough space for that to accommodate that. I'm not showing all the parking, but yeah, definitely we can have like the sheriff's parking. You'll see that, and I'm not sure if you can see my hand. That light blue area essentially would be like a fleet garage for the sheriff. Sheriff's parking would be on that side. We deviate where public can be as versus where public would park. There's different options to that to, I don't want to say isolate them, but kind of keep staff parking a little bit more secure so they're not parking with public. So those things that would still have to be, we can get a little bit more detailed into that option as well.
Corey, is it safe to say that starting with a flat unoccupied site gives certain advantages?
Definitely.
I was assuming that, but I wanted to
Yep.
make sure.
Nope. It's
Mr. Manning first.
Yeah, question for Josh.
as you noted, and
Yeah,
as a
sorry.
as an architect, you kind of look at a flat site. You'll have a civil and engineer says, well, that's not always the case. That's best. We do have a slight grade to it, nothing drastic, but I think it definitely works out. You don't have any drastic grades to it, and it can work out quite well. Obviously, there'll probably be a retention pond out here. Like I said, you said runoff and everything. That would probably be located towards those lowlands.
We had a question for our highway commissioner. Mr. Manning had a question.
All the overburden will come out of there. Is that type of thing something we can use on the highways and winter?
Yes.
That'd be pretty handy.
As the elevation's been addressed for the floodplain, because industrial during a flood event normally does go underneath water, pretty much almost to the intersection of Fleming Drive.
Okay, did you hear that, Corey?
Yeah, but they're flooding at that intersection.
The flood water goes from Highway 80 up to industrial, almost to Fleming Drive. We've had to put barricades there
Yep.
many times because of flooding events.
Yeah, I see that. That is a low area.
Would that have impact that we need to consider?
It would be definitely considered, and I would take that in a factor if we can make that on-site retention pond on how that would work out to try to alleviate any of those future events.
Mr. Carroll?
It would help me if we have access to these images for thinking through later outside of the meeting. I know this portion of what you guys have done, and in the past, we've seen images, but I don't have access to them.
Is that something you could share with us, Corey?
Yes, yeah, I'll send them over.
Yeah, if you could get them to our administrator, Trish, and then she can make sure the rest of us get it.
Definitely.
Thank you.
How would the square footage with this concept here with if we tried to squeeze it in at our current location?
So, sorry, was that a question? If I
Yes,
just heard
the question
squeezing
was,
it in.
how would the square footage at this proposed site compare to trying to fit it downtown? Is it comparable? Is there a difference?
Well, if you did it downtown, this is obviously much larger than what we're trying to do downtown because it has other different aspects to it. Part of it, obviously, we're renovating some of the sheriff's office for the sheriff. I should say renovating the jail portions for the sheriff office and other departments. So you're not having that addressed. And I'll just bring back compared to this one. This is mostly all jail support, etc. into this area. Sheriff would basically, we are looking at renovation of the jail for the sheriff in this area. So obviously that's not included. County government, it would still remain in the existing buildings. So this is just Justice Center. If you're looking at having that whole master plan, this whole thing put on here, it would be pretty much what you'd see here. Justice Center could go up on the above the law enforcement center as well. That is an option. I didn't show that one because you could put the Justice Center above the law enforcement center here, but then the law enforcement center has to be built first. We would actually plan on Justice Center, so like columns would kind of go through the roof, column pads, and then in the future you build up from there and you make that most accountable for future expansion. So that also is an option in this layout. But as far as size wise, you would be filling up pretty much that same footprint. But then again, you would be tearing down obviously the existing facilities, which make it more complicated for construction. I wouldn't be able to get this whole thing in the available space that I'm indicating right now, unless you buy more land.
Mr. Carroll.
The Greenfield site, is there any advantage to think about adding EMS to that, or is that not considered?
Oh, that could definitely, EMS would be, I think, is included into that for that square footage.
The city is looking at potentially building a new fire station someday out in that area too, so. Nothing firm, but
Yeah.
they will build it.
So is there any economic documentation that you see when a complex like this goes up in an industrial park area versus having it in the city center? Is that something we should be, I'm curious about that, if there's any economic vision. Do more people start building out there because this is happening? What's your history, your thoughts on that?
It's a good question. I haven't foreseen when you build something like this on a greenfield site, so to speak, what gets developed around it. It would make the adjacent properties, I think, a little bit more valuable. And then so that might be it starts kind of growth from there. So if there's any available sites, other businesses would be attracted to the site. Compared to downtown, if you look down here, one of the attractions that we find mostly is if you stay downtown, the businesses around there, restaurants, etc., all around the downtown site will be maintained. Staff goes to lunch or etc. That usually helps the economic growth that way. More on a downtown site. A little bit different options because you're maintaining businesses that may be already there, or it makes property around the area a little bit more susceptible to business coming in, where greenfield site with industrial facilities are around it, it just more, obviously there might be what goes in there, zoning changes might have to apply, but it does help either way, anything around the facility.
Other questions?
Chairman, this is Troy Nagy from Regional Planning. I know this is not the reason I'm on the call, but may I offer a thought?
Sorry, I think we had a couple people talking there at once. Yeah, Mr. Manning first, and then was it Troy who wanted to ask a question there?
Yes, sir, if it's appropriate. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I can
Go ahead, Mr. Manning.
To me, it looks like if there's any savings in industrial park versus Richland Center itself would be the parking. We wouldn't need a parking ramp out there.
Correct. Yeah, but the parking structures do get expensive.
Okay, Troy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Troy Nagy, Director at Southwest Regional Planning Commission. We keep a pretty good database, having worked around the Driftless in our 5 counties, of what we call a constructability analysis for all 6,000 some parcels in the region. And we looked at this site with Jason Glassbrunner and others. And just 2 thoughts. This is very preliminary, but things to delve into, which you guys will do so. But the green map up there is also the 500-year flood. And we also worked with Darren Gudgeon in Viola. We've worked around the region. At the risk of telling you what you know, the rivers, they don't care about the floodplain. So there's certainly nothing to say you can't build in a 500-year floodplain and berms and stormwater and all that. But in Viola in particular, we saw on several occasions the water just exceed the footprint of the mapped 500-year. That's probably manageable, as is the other thing I would just bring up as a very preliminary note. There are 2 archaeological sites, Native American archaeological sites on that parcel. So just a note, that's not a prohibition outright. State Historic Preservation Office will work with you to analyze what's actually there. But the SHPO records do show 2 archaeological sites. That's one of the things that in talking with the city and Jason as we were analyzing development patterns and opportunities we looked at in the past. So just a quick note from our experience working in the city. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Troy. We appreciate it.
And is there another site out there, another area that's not as close to the floodplain? The industrial park?
I don't know.
I see a lot of green out there in the other side. I don't know what those are, what those hot sections are, but.
Yeah, this is just grassland on this site. The light green here that I'm kind of outlining a little bit is the floodplain that was on the information we received. So if there is any alternative sites out there, we will gladly take a look at those as well.
Check with the city on. Okay, we'll check with the city and see.
So the city identified this site initially?
It's been vacant for a while. It's been available for a while. It has all the infrastructure set up to it because it's right in the industrial park, and power, water, sewer is all there. So while it has advantages, we can see also there are some challenges.
Yes.
Not to mention the fact that it's out there.
We have to give the city anything for it?
Oh, I would guess, you know, in all honesty, the city would be very interested in what could be done with this property.
And
Josh, go ahead.
Like to remind you that the county already owns a large parcel of land right off the lake on the other side of the industrial park. That whole city did.
Okay. So we do have some existing holding out there.
where's that?
Right off the double A, right across from the fairgrounds. You know, the big lot where they have all the auctions and all
Oh, yeah,
the gates right there. Going.
that's right.
Down there.
That's right, I forgot about that.
If say you never had an issue where the highway department said nowhere near floodplain, is it?
Excellent to know as we consider options. All right. Any final questions for Corey? You can get those sent to Tricia, Corey. We'd appreciate it. We'll be in touch when we find out some more information about other potential sites.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, continuing with reports, we're down now to D, a review of housing summit information. This, I believe, came from Supervisor Carroll.
Yeah. The reason I wanted to add that to our agenda is obviously housing is an issue here. Went to the housing summit just to see what resources, what current information they were sharing, and I put 3 of the presentation files in our packet so you guys can look over. There's there's ways of funding things like this that I'm not up to speed on, but that these guys were talking about a lot of that stuff. This particular file that Derek has a lot of very current data on not just Richland County, but the area in terms of housing, demographics, economics, and how they all relate to our housing issue. And I just thought it'd be good background for everyone to see as we think about what might happen at the campus. I don't really have any conclusion. This is just good background information I think we should have available to us.
Yes, very good. Thank you for sharing it. Anybody have questions for Supervisor Carroll?
One thing I did notice that some of the other counties get pretty successful at adding housing. I hope we can join that group.
And a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that brings us to item 8, discussion and possible action, request for proposal process presentation by Southwestern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission.
So we do have Troy and Kate online, but I don't know if we lost Kate and we just have Troy.
Nope, I'm here as well.
Perfect, perfect. So if you guys want to just take over, we set this up because there was some discussion about how do we find people interested in the campus. And so I reached out to you and you created a proposal for us that you're going to highlight right now.
Very good. And I'm going to take the start on this, and then Troy will fill in some details and may jump in with some added comments. I'm not going to, read the proposal for you, but I want to go through the highlights as just to give you some of the background. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Southwest Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. You know, we have worked in Richland County for decades and have enjoyed our longstanding relationship with you. Our goal, first and foremost, is always to make sure that our communities thrive and grow and have access to all the data and facts that we have available, like Troy was just sharing about, the industrial park and other elements that we're aware of. So we're well suited to assist you as you move through this process to try and determine who would be your best partner or partners as you look at redeveloping the campus. In the scope of work, I can talk a little bit about that and some of the highlights. We have gone through this kind of RFP development work for other projects. The nice thing about hiring someone from the outside to take a look and screen some of these is, one, we'd work in partnership with you so that you make sure that we have all the questions that we need and we hit all the points that you're most interested in, but we can serve as an independent agent to review, assess, and then present findings so that you can best take a look at it. The way we've approached this kind of work in the past is that we gather all the information about the project and prepare on the RFP for the potential entities that take a look at, including timetables and deadlines and submission requirements. We tend to learn quite a bit about potential partners through this process, on how diligent they are, what kinds of questions they're asking, and how they move through the development phases. Inside of this RFP, we would outline the development type, like ask from them, what is going to be the most beneficial to the community. So what recommendations are they having for the type of development, the anticipated use? We'd share with them any regulatory considerations that we're aware of and see what they bring to the table, what sort of ownership structure they would propose on the project as it moves forward. The good thing is that we're taking a look at the minimum responsibilities and requirements for everyone that submits, how they've worked around this in the past, what are some of their other projects, what they need and have had in development agreements, timings, deadlines, referrals on who they've worked with. We want to make sure that anyone that we pick or recommend to you, for you to make the ultimate selection, of course, is someone who is responsive and responsible and is there to make sure that what they're recommending really does serve the community, as far as, does it bring in the right mix of housing, should that be the avenue, and does it serve it to pay back in taxes over the life of the project. In order to manage through the many proposals that we may get back, we set up a matrix so that we would work in conjunction with your committee to make sure that we are tracking the developer's track record, that their references, of course, that they would supply, samples of their projects, the reliability and depth of their funding sources. In our work in the past, we set up a grid and rate all of their responses. Any questions that come to us through the RFP process, we would then post in a publicly available Q&A section so that no one is getting any preferential treatment. Everyone is on the same even playing field. We would also screen them to make sure that they have the right security and insurance. And then, you know, their notes and questions on how we reach back to them. And if there's any question or discussion on any definitions. So that's sort of the flow of the process. And between the work that I've done on RFPs, and of course, Troy has an extensive background in construction management as well, we think we've been very successful in the past in managing through this. The development work section. Are there questions on that at this time? Or Troy, did you want to round out any of those comments?
I think that was great. I would say that, you know, the trick is to ensure the fairness in the RFP process, but also use the market, the competitive market, to enable creativity from each developer. We've managed millions of dollars of procurement for federal projects and as well as state projects. So if this is going to be funded in part or in whole by your Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation grant, we can make sure there's no issues there. We got a good relationship with WDC. So that's the trick, right? Is making sure that there's equity and fairness and what they call a level playing field amongst the submitters, the bidders, if you will, but also structuring the RFP such that they can each bring their own unique value proposition. This is not an RFP in the sense that they're going to tell us the cost to do the work. As Kay said, we would structure this to have them tell us the uses and vision for the land, what they think the public and private return on investment would be, whether that's in tax base or additional sales, if it's commercial, industrial, if it's housing, number of units, type of unit, demonstrate the need, and so forth. And then you'd be able to weigh that against your own goals as a county.
Questions? Mr. Carroll?
Could you explain which party takes the lead in the role of going after grants or other finance means? Is it the developer? Is it you? Is it us? How do you see that play usually?
Troy, I can address that, and we'll see if you want to roll in. It is not addressed that for us to pursue grants in this RFP that we've presented this time. It is something that we have done in the past and could quote separately. Oftentimes, a developer will also have a good understanding of the grant availability and what would apply. So it is not included in this specific work. We do have the capability to assist in that effort if needed.
So in the review process of the proposals, I would assume we would make sure that they address if they have chased that kind of financing.
Yes, and it would be of great value, I think, to take a look at that in a little more detail. And that's something that we could set up with the committee to make sure that the grants that they are perhaps referencing that they would consider going after are truly active, available, funded grants that could have a role in this process.
We could, in the RFP, even create a list of potential funding streams. On our end, regional planning has secured the funding for the city's 2 current industrial park developments. Some 20 plus years ago down where Rockwell is. That was an EDA, Economic Development Administrative funded industry park that we wrote. And then in 2010, our office also wrote the industry park for the land pretty close to where you were just looking. In fact, the Northern Industrial Park. So EDA builds industry parks. So if there is an industry component, commercial industrial component, that would be a funding stream. There is some funding from Wisconsin Housing Economic Development Administration, WIDA, for infrastructure. So if they're depending on the kind of family, single family, multifamily homes that would be there. WEDC has some funding. The city's really aggressive about tapping into that, and you can only get so many so often, but perhaps by the time this projects materialize, the city would be open again. And then lastly, the city would be your key partner in terms of tax increment financing. The last we discussed with them, the TIF opportunities, they have a lot of capacity. They had, as of late last year, a lot of capacity for additional tax increment financing. And so what I would propose, I don't know, Mr. Caro, that you want the consultant writing their own grants. I'm not opposed to that, but I would suggest that the RFP could identify future potential public funding streams that have been tapped into historically, no guarantees, of course, all of that language, but then ask the bidders to outline incentives and funding they think they would need, and specifically for what and how much, right? So any kind of grant funding is tied to the funding agency's mission. EDA does not do housing, you won't get it. WEDA does not do industry parks, you won't get it, all right? So having the bidders tell us, based on what you plan to do, the uses of the land, what funding streams would you need for what uses, and have them put that on the table, as well as I think there's no harm in asking what funding streams you think you could bring other than private equity and private funding. So again, using the bid form, if you will, the proposal form, to give them the flexibility and gather the information as to who needs what for what purposes, but also put on the table the county would be open to working with public funding if available. Again, no guarantees, of course, of public funding given the world today.
Go ahead, Steve.
I don't know much about TIDs and TIFs, but is that something the city has to get involved with? And when is the right time to start having that conversation?
Yeah, I would, so the city creates a tax increment district. You usually work with a consultant, someone who knows municipal finances, engineers to identify the project. I would say today is a great time to get on the horn and say, if and when we get a project, would the city be open to discussing TID? That's a really open-ended ask, but at least, of course, we're sitting here on a public meeting, but at least the city knows that the county's putting some money in and has a vision and you want to be a partner in the thing. The tax increment districts themselves are very specific to land and land use, so there's not really any value in doing any analysis currently. But a friendly conversation and phone call among colleagues can never happen too soon.
Yeah.
It's already scheduled for next week. I have a meeting scheduled with Ashley Elephant next week.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, super.
Any other questions on this part of the RFP? Okay. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Carroll.
It's not really a question right this minute, but I have a lot of nuts and bolts questions about what goes into the RFP, but at some point I'd like to have Dr. give that in.
Okay.
And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, Troy and Kate, but that is one of the, if we engage in services with you, there will be like 2 to 3 meetings to talk about what all goes into the RFP. What do we put in there? What do we want to see come out of this?
Exactly. And we'd work in collaboration. We certainly bring a framework that allow us to have sort of a good start, but then work sort of hand in glove to make sure that we are covering the specifics of this project and ensuring that we're going to hit all the bullet points and all the details so that we can compare them when we do get our responses.
Yeah, I would envision a kickoff meeting in which we bring what we think we know. You bring what you want. We marry that up and have a second iteration. And I have some experience responding to Mr. Caro's technical questions, so I would look forward to that as well. It makes us stronger. It's really great. So everybody's welcome from our end to provide the input. We'd leave that to you and your leadership team.
Okay.
All right. Was there more you had to share with us?
No, nothing else at this time. Everything is listed in our RFP, talking about exact deliverables, timelines, costs. So we're open for questions or any further discussion or we'll sign off if we're no longer needed.
Maybe what would like to do, something we want to move forward with?
I do have a second option lined up that
Okay.
can come to us on July 2nd if we have another meeting then, to look at another entity that can do the same thing, that could present another proposal to us.
That's right, man.
July 2nd. So it's a month out.
So is that something that would be just in the essence of time that we do before that? I mean, is it would be available, we could meet in a couple of weeks to review that, or is that just?
So we're doing July 2nd because the agency is hiring a new person, and that's when they would be able to put a proposal together for us.
All right, so is that our preferred method to move forward here? We'll then the other proposal on July 2nd, that we can make a recommendation, work it towards the full board.
I think to gather information is very critical, and so I'd like to see the other information so we have a picture we can draw. Nothing against what they're doing here, but we have to have all our.
I'm always in favor of multiple options.
Yeah, it is good to have options. All right, well, Troy and Kate, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We will certainly follow up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Thank you all.
So, no official action on that. We move on to item number 9, discussion and possible action to set a future meeting date. I believe someone mentioned July 2nd.
Yes, please.
Does that work for everybody?
So good.
5 p.m.
Yes, please.
Again, 5 p.m. on July 2nd. Skip correspondence for just a second and talk about future agenda items for that July 2nd meeting. Obviously, the other proposal and consideration of what to do moving forward is part of that. By then, hopefully, we'll have a bridge done. What else do we want to have on the agenda for July 2nd? I made a note, is that a time we want to have a conversation about what all items we want to include in our grant application to go to the state? Start making our list of what we'd like to do with that 2 million and get that paperwork going, since we've got a bridge to pay for now. So,
Yeah.
or reimburse for.
And the state has to approve what our listed items are primarily.
It's not that we're held strictly to that, but they want to know what we're going to spend it on. Then
Right.
we'll have to report back on what we did spend it on, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Carroll.
As far as future agenda item, this RFP process identifies a developer, but in terms of actually executing a development, signing contracts, all that, I think we as a county need to think about how we would manage that. It's going to be a big project, and so.
Yeah, and those are conversations we could have with whoever we elect to help us with the RFP process and define the scope of what we're looking for. You know, are we looking to someone to come in and basically just take the property off our hands and they develop it from there? Are we looking to be actively involved? You know, what is our expectation?
Right, and what I'm saying is even if we hand it over to the developer, we still have significant effort to interface that I think sometimes gets underappreciated.
Okay.
They would just bring us proposals, right, that we could have.
That's where we're at this point, yeah.
Yeah.
This is not something that's gonna happen overnight, so. it's-
Where you want to call it the engineer of record or project management entity, or somebody in-house who's very much dedicated to communication and interface. We just need to think about how that might go.
Any other future agenda items?
Do you want me to get to Venture, the property that we own out by the fairgrounds, and have them take a look at that like they did with the land in North Industrial Park, or no?
I would say.
Yeah, we should consider every possibility.
Absolutely.
Even if they look at it and say, no, that won't work, okay, then we don't.
Sounds good.
Any other future agenda items? And we'll jump back to item 10. Do we have any correspondence for the committee? At this point, all right. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn until 5 PM on July 2nd. Motion by Mr. Manning, second by Mr. Carroll. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.